Sandra's on location. Sandra's on
sometimes
location.
it's like that.
Yeah, it be's like that sometimes. It be's like that.
Yeah, too many hustles.
So she's on location, but she is making it here or whatever. So we're back. We have a lot on the ballot. Like we did our first little Instagram live yesterday. If you all didn't get to go see it, go roll on back and roll the tape. We want you to like, share, and subscribe our page. We've been having a good time talking to candidates. So we're back today with another candidate running in the city of Plantation. So remember, we told you we'd like to bring out as many down ballot candidates as possible because, like co-host has always said, these are the people who make decisions for your everyday lives. So
all elections are local.
All day. You got to get to know these people. You got to get to find out who they are and make sure you create relationships because listen, they can't do it on their own. They need the help of the community so they can, we all live here together. So we got to work together, right? All right. So before we start, let me go with some dates. And I'm always going to talk about our election dates because it's very, very important. This DeSantis out here acting a whole fool. So, he can't keep his job in November. So here's the dates. Here we go. Election day, as you know, is November 8th, and that's the very last day to vote. However, we have early voting starting on October 24th, and it runs through November 6th. So make sure you understand early voting, October 24th, and runs to November 6th. Take advantage, mail-in ballots. Mail-in ballots you have up until the October 28th.
28th to request it.
That's your last day you can request your mail-in ballots. Last day to request your mail-in ballots is October 28th. Last day to register to vote, this is to register, is October 11th. Listen, guys, we're 2 days away or a day away from October. Please take advantage. If you haven't done it, do that at ASAP, as soon as possible, because democracy is on the line in November. All right? Okay, so let me recap now. November 8th is the very last day you can vote, and you can only vote at your precinct. At your designated precinct. October 24th to November 6th is early voting. You can go anywhere that has early voting sites. You can go vote there. October 28th is the last day to request your mail-in ballot. Very last day. Last day to register is October 11th. Don't act like we ain't tell y'all the dates. We're going to keep telling y'all the dates until we can't tell them anymore. So we want you to be prepared. Please don't not vote in November. Trust me, your vote matters. All right, co-host, introduce yourself.
Yep. No, y'all know me. I'm co-host of Racing the Races. I'm here every time. We've already taken up a few minutes of Miss Denise time, so this is going to be about her because we started a little bit late. Just go ahead. So we're here, like my co-host said, that we're here really just informing the people about down ballot candidates because they are the most important. When you got them potholes, the lights ain't working, all of those things. They doing some construction and put out no signs. These people that you call to help you take care of all of those things, right? And now we just had a few days of rain that was about months of rain in a couple of days. That infrastructure, the drainage, that's going to be local, even if they're going to need money from the federal government. That money, you're going to have to contact your local officials to get those things resolved. They're the ones that's going to mask to Tallahassee and to Washington, D.C. to look out for the residents. So all elections are local. So let's go, Denise.
Debris out there. You're going to need somebody on the city council to help you now.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, introduce yourself, Ms. Horland, and let everybody know who you are.
Thank you. First of all, Narnique and Sandra, I'm so glad you're doing this. As I said, I hear you say it. I say it all the time. The down ballot candidates need a lot of love. So thank you for doing it. And before I introduce myself, I want to talk about the voting again. Please vote early because we saw what just happened with the storm. You don't want to wait until November 8th. Get your ballot in as early as possible because there may be some shenanigans at the polls and we want to make sure those votes get in early. So anyway, again, thank you for having me. Denise Horland. I am the current city council member in Plantation for Group 5. I say this often, never thought that I would run for office. At the age of 54, after spending 20 years involved in my community, I had given up my career when my eldest was born because I grew up, my mom had to work 2 jobs And my husband and I decided, you know what, I wanted to take some time. Still not sure if it was the right decision, but I stayed home with the kids. But they all turned out to be great young adults. But I really threw myself into the community, getting involved in our schools. I was PTA president. We weren't just doing bake sales. We were raising $64,000 over the course of 3 years with a fundraiser I implemented to raise money for technology at the elementary school. Created a athletic foundation at the high school. At that time, one of the sports my son was playing was lacrosse, which was kind of an elite prep school up north sport. And I'm really proud that we're able to put sticks in the hands of kids that never would have been able to play lacrosse, and we're able to go to college on that. So, really involved. Education Advisory Board. My husband is a cancer survivor, got involved in the board of Plantation Relay for Life for many years. And we've been residents of the city for 29 years. I have 3 children. I was telling Narnika and Sandra earlier that my eldest was we all kind of have the local government bug. He was working in the state legislature for 2 years for State Representative Bobby DeBose, who I happen to think is one of the best examples of a servant leader. And one of the people that I sought advice from when my eldest son and husband talked me into running 4 years ago, because it's a scary thing. I think especially, when you're looking at local government and you've been involved in your community, and if you're private, like I am, putting yourself out there. I said often to people that I felt like I was jumping out of a plane. I was either going to land triumphantly on my feet or with a thud. And fortunately, I did win every precinct 4 years ago. So, one of the things, big for my family and I is really being together. They're all here. My kids are home this week with the storm. My husband just went up to Vero Beach and brought my 92-year-old mother down because she had no power today. So I'm all about family. And I'm about this community that we've really planted these roots in for the last 29 years. So I'll be happy to take questions. I know we want to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of what I do and what I want to do for the community. So awesome. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Awesome. We're kindred spirits because I used to be PTA president, PTO president. And raising money and getting all that other stuff was a lot of work. It was like the 80-20 rule back then. I don't know if it still is, but it was like the 80-20 rule when I was doing it.
Yeah, it's a full-time job.
It is a full-time job. Yeah. Like, when parents used to give me answers, I'm like, listen, I'm doing this for free. Now you need to calm down. We go work together. All right. So listen, one of the questions we ask candidates is, what are your top 3 things? Now, since you've been city council already, you are running for re-election. What are some things that you would like to implement, or if you've already implemented or you want to enhance? But what top 3 things are your your goals, you're goaling for the city of Plantation?
So my big push as I'm running for re-election, I've been talking about this for the last year with my colleagues, is comprehensive strategic planning. And that really encompasses a lot of things. But I look to other cities. City of Coral Springs is an example of someone who does it really, really well. And I met with one of my colleagues there to really learn more about their process. Now there's strategic planning done in administration, but that really hasn't included the council. It doesn't get feedback from the residents or the business community. So why am I pushing for that? City of Plantation is going to be 70 years old next year. We have aging infrastructure, some of which we've been dealing with. There are parts of our community that need a little more love as we're approaching 70 years old. We need to make sure we see what happened with the hurricane this week, that our stormwater system is working properly. We just approved a stormwater master plan. We use some of our ARPA funding to pay for that. But we really need to start to talk about sustainability, resiliency. With the development going on, we need to talk about affordability. Do we have the infrastructure to support the density that's coming in? Do we have the public safety personnel to be able to keep the community safe and have, and deal with the population as we start to approach 100,000 people, which we may in the next several years? We're about 96,000 right now. So that's why I really want this comprehensive strategic planning to take place, where we take a day and a half with the directors, administration, and the council. And also, a big component of this, there needs to be a very detailed survey of the business community and the residents so that we can hear what they want and what their needs are. So I have a commitment from administration that will start that process in 2013. And I think when you talk about my big priorities, that will deal with the aging infrastructure. That will, deal with, our sustainability and some of those issues and our growth and how we're going to handle that. Schools, as I mentioned, my background, was really proud in 2010 to be named a Broward County Volunteer of the Year. That was really important for me that we were supporting our schools as a community, and now vice versa. I'm in a different position, really uplifting. Our educators are being beaten up every day. So we really need to make sure that we're getting into our schools. I've been wanting to get on, and everything got a little interrupted with the pandemic. For the last couple of years, what I've really wanted to get on our website is a school guide so that we could start to showcase what programs are in our public schools in the city and get that on the website. So that's a big thing that I want to be able to achieve in this next term if I'm fortunate enough to be reelected.
All right, then. Thank you. So one of the things you talked about was like aging infrastructure. So that's one of the things that I know that the federal infrastructure bill that, many of the Republican senators, including the 2 senators from the state of Florida, didn't support. But because of what just happened this week, we see how needed it is, right? The president had a really big ask. He was able to get maybe half of what it is that he really wanted. How do you think? And so whatever the money is, how do you think that money, if our governor decides to take it, would impact your city?
Oh, it's going to be a huge impact. So, as you said, I think President Obama had tried to get the infrastructure bill passed and he was blocked. And now President Biden's been able to do that. And we always worry in the state of Florida, is that going to be taken from the state and not, funneled down into the municipalities? Listen, as I said, we use the ARPA funding that we received during the pandemic to be able to do that stormwater master plan so we can see where our strengths and weaknesses are. That's going to be critical for a community of our age. When you look at the rain we received 2 days ago ahead of the hurricane, listen, I know in my street I flooded, but my stormwater drains worked and it was clear by the next morning. On the east part of town, which is a little bit older, and we're still in the process of upgrading some of those systems, those properties didn't drain as quickly. So those are the types of things that we're looking to correct and shore up that infrastructure. Roads. We talk about the growth in Broward County, and certainly in Plantation, we are in the middle of the county, and we lead, our arterial roadways lead to 595. So we get a lot of pass-through traffic here. So the roadways, that infrastructure bill, there is a bridge that we're doing a PD&E study on right now to try to alleviate some of the traffic from University and funnel that to State Road 84 and then to 595. Those are all the types of things that we need to fund, those roadway improvements. So we're really looking to that infrastructure bill to be able to help us do so.
Okay, and then you talked about development and density, right? Development is happening all over the state because so many people want to come to Florida. And I know Plantation is one of those cities that don't really have enough space for you to just build something like out. You really have to build up. What does that look like? And so if developers are coming in and trying to do that, is that something that you would support? And if so, why? And if not, why?
So I think, a lot of elected officials give you we have to be smart in development. What does that mean? So what I'll tell you is happening in my community. Prior to my getting elected in 2018, the previous councils had approved, and I just ran these numbers, over 3,600 multifamily units. That's a lot. And a lot of those,
where's that supposed to happen?
Some of them, and a lot of them have been built, but now what you're seeing is, it takes a long time for these projects to come online. So a lot of those projects that were approved by the past council are just coming online now. And residents are rightfully freaking out because they didn't know they'd been approved 7 years ago and the cranes are going up. So there is this awareness about, the building. Now, I'm not going to say all the development was bad. I'm not anti-development. I think some of it was inappropriate in the density and maybe the placement. But we've tried to create this midtown in Plantation. We're very fortunate that we have our, we kind of call that our quasi-urban core. Then we've got our residential. And then we have on the western part of town, Plantation Acres. A lot of those homes are acre lots. People could have, cows out there and horses. So we really have, something for everyone. we need the density in that middle part of town, Sandra, to be able to have that economic vibrancy. We need to be able to, we want companies. Chewy just moved their headquarters to Plantation. We want companies to invest in our community. We want to be able to provide places to live. The problem we're running into now is affordability, and that's across the whole state, across the nation. That's when you need to start thinking strategically and looking at all the resources. And I'm going to give you an example, and I'm going to be careful on some of this because this will be public and it could be quasi-judicial, as we may have to vote for it as a council. But we have a project that came before our council in 2019. I was against the project for a host of reasons. I thought it was a very troubled developer and project. They were approved by my colleagues as condos. And I knew at one point they're going to come back as rental units. They're about to come back to us. And I looked at that, it's 330 units, as an opportunity to say, you know what, if they're going to come back to us with rental units, then we need to have an affordability component in there. So I met with Ralph Stone at the Housing Finance Authority with Broward County, and I said, tell me what funding's out there. Came up with a bunch of things. And then last Monday, I sat down with the attorney for the applicant and said, okay, you're coming back to us. This is what I got. You know what? We need to have a blend of affordability in there. So those are the type of things, he's going to take it back to the applicant, and then they'll come to council. And I think I can make a very convincing argument for my colleagues and also for the community that we're not reapproving a new development. It's already up, the shell's there, but let's take those units and build some affordability into it. I also think there's a little bit.
Hold on. Sorry.
Okay.
When you say affordability, what does that mean, and what is that looking like? What is it that looking like, right?
It's not market rate. Because all these, you see all these buildings going up and they're market rate. Well, some of them were approved market rate 5 years ago at 1,600, and now they're going for 2,200. So that's whatever the market will bear. So I think when we talk about affordability, you've got to have a blend of low, you've got to have a workforce. It's going to depend on people's, income level. If I may, because I could talk about this all day long. I'm going to give you an example. In July, I was contacted by a resident. She is an educator. She's a 30-year educator, has her master's degree in education, and reached out because she had applied for the ERPA funding through the county, the emergency rental assistance. They raised her rent and she was going to be evicted. And it got down to the Friday that she was going to be evicted. And I was able to reach out to my county commissioner that serves her. We were able to get her funding through, but she was going to end up in her car. And this is the problem that's happening. It's not just the low income. There are a host of people that are, our essential workers, our educators, our nurses, our service industry professionals that can't afford to live in this community anymore. So, when we see new restaurants open over Plantation Walk and everybody's excited, but they have to wait, an hour for service, because they can't afford to hire people because no one can afford to live in the community. So I think that we need to look, as I said, everybody wants to put the burden on the developer. It needs to be cost efficient for them as well. But there's funding out there. The county has some funding. There's all kinds of things that we can do within tax incentives, partner with the developer. And I think that more communities need to do that and also take up some of the burden away from the county, because we know that there are communities, 31 municipalities, that they don't want any affordability in their community.
I have to ask you then, what are your thoughts about the $15 minimum wage? Because you're talking about what people should be able to do, and all they should be able to. All of this shouldn't be on the developers and all that, because they got to make their money and all of that stuff, right? But people in South Florida don't get paid like that to pay $2,200, $2,600, $3,000 a month rent. That's just not our income. Teachers are making $4,700, $47,000 a year. They're probably getting paid like $3,600 a month, or $4,000. It's not even $4,000, because $4,000 would be a $48,000 a year salary. So that's not what it is. So how are you have a person with a degree that's going to make $47,500 a year. How are they paying this rent?
Well, and that's why I talk about the subsidies. And don't get me wrong, it's not about
what subsidies do they have for middle income folks?
Well, I'm not worried about the developers making their money. We just need to make it so that they could build this, because cost has gone up. Okay. That's, definitely material cost has gone up. There's subsidies within the county that can make the building of those units affordable. And there's state and local.
So the subsidies is going to go to the developer and not the people that live there?
Correct. So I'll give you an example, and I can't go into too many details, but like say
I don't
for
want you
example,
to, but I just want
this
to understand how is it that it's
right.
okay for a developer to get like a subsidy, but when we're trying to get different kind of subsidies for people and working
Right.
folks, everyone's against that and they call that welfare and all of this type of stuff. What's the
Oh, I
difference?
get you. And listen, it's got to
Okay.
be broader than that. But we need
Okay.
somebody to be able to build these units so that they will be able to be rented at an affordable rate for the people in our community. So if we get the funding to be able to, like, say this development, say that the county is able to give us, or give the $50,000 per unit to be able to bring that cost down, so that makes it cost efficient for everybody. Then
But
we
that
can rent.
$50,000 come from taxpayers.
Some of it's federal grants.
I guess. I mean, I guess where I think Sandra's confusion is, which is quite frankly my confusion, is why are we giving incentives to the developer, but we're not giving incentives to the constituents
To the
or
renter.
to the renters? Why are we
Right.
why are we not working it where it's flipped, where the developer, in order for him to get, or he or she to get the bid to be a developer in the city, that they
Right.
have to provide a certain amount of residents or a certain amount of units for low income housing?
Well, and that's what this is. So say, for example, okay, and I'll say hypothetically, because again, I don't want to get into too many details on this. Say you've got 300 units are being built, and we say, you know what, we want 100 of those for a blend of affordability. So when I talk about the grants, it's not so much you're working it on the back end so that it's affordable enough. And again, we're not talking about anyone's profit margin. We're talking about the cost to build these units now because of the cost of materials. So we want to make sure that we can build in that affordability and put it in to the contract, the development agreement, that those are going to remain affordable for 30, 50 years, and that rent will stay so that it's feasible for the people in the community. So it's just another way to build the affordability component into the community. A lot of communities are not doing that. Listen, I told you 3,600 units were approved in the city of Plantation prior to my getting on. There was no affordability component in any of those units.
And I still don't see how that's going to happen if people's salaries aren't changing. So, I mean, they could talk all that affordability, blah, blah, blah right now, but I don't see how it's going to be affordable if you have people who aren't making any more money. And if they're going to be using market rate, who is dictating this market, since that market isn't based on the income of the people that live in that community? So, I mean, I don't want to get you bogged down in, like you said, there's a lot of things
that's
you
my
can't talk
point.
about.
Then they're not market rate apartments. That's what I'm saying. If you get that affordability component, then you have a blend of affordability in rents, so that we're not looking at market rate.
But what is affordability mean? Is it rent control? Because I don't think you could do rent control in Florida. Is it going to be a cap on how much they can charge for that unit? That's not what I'm hearing either. That's why I'm confused.
No, it is. You do set the price for what they could charge for the unit. Absolutely. Absolutely. And it depends on a person's income. It'll be similar to the way that Section 8 government housing works. It's the income scale. So, I'm not going to be able to pop up the numbers in my head right now, but say somebody, if market rate is 22,000, I think some of the numbers I was looking at with him would be like depending on their income, $1,000 a month for rent. It would depend on what the blend of units the council or the commission requires for that project, and the rents would have to be appropriate and commensurate for the income of the individual.
And so when you say what the blend, that means that's like a certain percentage of the units are available for people that fall within the income bracket. Is that what it is?
Right.
Like, so if it's 300, if it's 3,600 units, they're going to have 500 available to fall into that price structure.
Well, say let's take one development, okay? So let's just use 330 and say the council commission says, okay, we want, half of that. All right. So, or, even 100 of those units, then you could work out the details to have a blend of affordability in there. Workforce housing would be completely different than low income. So you have a blend of rate, if that makes sense.
Okay. I understand. I get it. Thank you. I didn't mean for us to get stuck on that.
No, listen, and it's just something. And so to your original point, everyone has to start looking at it more creatively to see what funding's out there. There's some movement like City of Plantation. There's not a lot of land left to develop. So now it's going to be about redevelopment. What are we going to look to redevelopment? Some some counties and cities in the United States are looking at some of their shopping centers, aging shopping centers that are empty. What can we do for building affordability within there? You know, I think that there should be something for teachers. Miami-Dade had tried something like that. Build teacher housing. We can't get enough teachers in our schools. So I think there's a lot of things out there. It just takes the money and the will to try to make it work.
So is that old fashioned? You talked about old. So is that old fashioned mall part of Plantation?
Yes. So if you're
familiar with that, what are they doing with that one?
So Fashion Mall, that was a project approved before I came on. That is now called Plantation Walk, and it's a mixed use. There's office in there. The original Sheraton Hotel is still there. And now there are apartments in the north phase and restaurants. They're filling that, Taco Crafts in there. There are other businesses, and they're looking to develop the south part as well. And then we've got the Broward Mall across the street. Pardon me?
What are they putting in that south part?
Well, they haven't come to us yet. I had really wanted over 55 because we see that in the city of Plantation, there's really no place if people, you know, have a home and they still want to live in the city. Maybe their kids have moved out. They don't want to maintain the home anymore. There's really no place for anyone to retire. We have one community and that's it. So they're coming back to us, I think, in October, November. I'm not sure what that's going to look like. I have a sneaking suspicion it's more market rate apartments.
All right, and I guess one of the things that I wanted to add that I'm on the, well, I'm not on, but I get the newsletter from the Broward Housing Council, and the last issue they sent was they for Broward County, they said 97% in that newsletter, 97% of residents cannot afford the median house amount, which was like what I think $530,000 or $540,000. 97% of Broward County residents. Yeah. So I guess one of the things that I think that Sandra and I both are a little bit not understanding, and we probably need to hear from other cities, is how is it that, you know, these cities are allowing these developers to come in, knowing that we have this horrific inflation that we're dealing with, and 97% of the constituents here are unable to afford housing. So I don't know. Remember, before we came on, we did talk about all the cities working in their own silos and how there needs to be some sort of connection between the Broward County Commission and the rest of the cities to figure this out. And I'm hoping someone would, you know, step up and take up that charge, because I really believe that I think if all 31 cities kind of work together on something like that, maybe you guys can come up with a better option than allowing the developers to come in and dictate how things go. Because I know that material is expensive, but you know, I think it's people over profit is my thing.
Well, let me address that if I may, because actually there is something going on to your point. And again, it is people over profit, but we need somebody to build those. So we need to be able to make it affordable for the community. So what the county commission has been doing, Commissioner Nanrich has been a champion for affordability in this community. And actually also Commissioner Steve Geller recently approached the cities with a plan. I also sit on the Broward Planning Council, and we just approved this component of it. So we talk about infrastructure, we talk about our roads, everybody's dealing with traffic. And remember the penny sales tax, everybody listed all their projects, sent them to the county, and they're rated. And some of those projects, you know, they move up and down the list. You may not see, the city may not see those projects for quite some time. So what they're trying to do is incentivize the cities, because as I said, not every city is demanding any level of affordability. They're letting the county do it. They're letting Fort Lauderdale do it. We're not going to do it. So I think what they're trying to do, the county is trying to push, you know, the hands of the cities and say, you've got to do this. And one of the incentives that they just came to us is, and this project I'm telling you about, we would be able to utilize some of this. If you start to incorporate affordability into any of these projects, then you will get extra points to move yourself up on the infrastructure, on the traffic, improvement projects. So they're kind of dangling a carrot out there to the communities to say, listen, you want your projects to go up, then you need to start to incorporate some affordability into your community. But as I said, City of Plantation has never done it. They've never incorporated any affordability. And it's really just with this council recently where we're pushing back on some of these developments coming in here and saying we need to have an affordable component. So, you know, it's tough. And then you have the residents who don't want any development in the community. So it's a double-edged
And
sword.
you talked about traffic. So Broward County, I mean, South Florida, period. Their public transportation absolutely sucks in this. And for it to be such a major city and have all of these things, it is absolutely horrible how you can't get from one place to another. It's very difficult to go east to west. And then you're saying something about like traffic, because they're going to have to make some adjustment with the traffic patterns just because of the development that's happening. What if anything, are your thoughts on what they can do about people getting back and forth in the county?
So I think it's inherent. I grew up in New York. People in Florida don't want to get out of their cars. So first of all, I think that there's got to be some dependability. People need to know that bus is going to show up when they need it to show up. One of the things that we're doing in the community years ago, the city of Plantation had a free trolley and people didn't use it. But now, again, we talk about the positives of building the density in our community, in the middle of our community. Now we're going to roll that out again. And that was one of the penny surtax projects. So what I'm happy about is we're going to start that on the east part of town first. And why is that important? Because we've got a lot of older people that don't drive out there and they need to get to doctor's appointments. Also, we have a great and a very vibrant recreational sports league. My husband and I have been involved for many years. My kids plays all kinds of sports. But while we have 42 parks in the city, our sports fields are in the middle of the city. So a lot of the kids in those neighborhoods, oftentimes, if their parents are working, they can't get to the fields unless somebody drives them. With that trolley, we'll be able to now facilitate that. So I'm hoping that's going to be ready to go by next year. That'll be free. Again, the walkability within that midtown. We're trying to get people to use the trolley, you build along those transportation corridors. And you mentioned Fashion Mall, the Plantation Walk. We also have the Broward Mall, which is right across the street. It's on University in Broward. It's the center of our city. It's across the street from the West Governmental Building for Broward County. That's a prime area right now for redevelopment. We have 5 owners of the mall. I think we're at a point where we can bring everybody to the table, and that's on a transportation corridor. The bus depot's across the street. So, those are the places that we really need to look for the redevelopment, hopefully getting some of those people out of their cars and utilizing the transportation.
All right. Okay. And in terms of the county and how you work with the county, because we asked the question with the other city, I think it was city of Fort Lauderdale. Do you guys have a good relationship with the Broward County Commission? And I know you just mentioned Nan Rich, but what, if any, is Plantation doing with the housing inflation if your residents needs help with rent and or mortgage payments? Obviously due to either, the long-term COVID issues and or, monies that was available for all cities.
So she did talk about that when your Wi-Fi went out. So she talked about a teacher, that a teacher that had some work issues, and she used some
me.
money.
That's what I did.
Her money to help her to stay in her place, so she wouldn't have to live in her car.
Well, so we talked about this. So this is twofold. We talked about that relationship with the county. Personally, I can pick up the phone and call the county commissioners that represent Plantation, even the ones that don't, and try to get some help, which is what I did for that particular resident. The city has a good relationship, but I think to the point, we talked about this before we went live, is a little bit people are working in silos during the pandemic. They had those weekly calls with the mayor. I was on 1 or 2 of those. I think that's great. Maybe if they did that quarterly, so that they make sure that everybody's getting the same information. I think that's important. Let's talk about the ARPA funding. What the city of Plantation did is we have been contracting with the Minority Builders Coalition. They've been handling all of our rental assistance for us. So we were able to give a lot of money in rental assistance. We also took over $1 million of that, and we wiped all the utility. We have our own utility, water and wastewater. We wiped all of the late fees. Anybody who owed money, we were able to wipe that for the residents. So I'm happy that we were able to do that. We haven't done as much with mortgage assistance historically, but definitely rental assistance. We were able to continue that with any funding that we have in that pot.
Okay, awesome. And is anything you're looking forward to bringing into Plantation, or any future endeavors that I know you are there, you've been there, but what do you think? What is it that's something new that you want to bring in, or what are some of your top goals in terms of bringing to Plantation that Plantation haven't seen yet? Do you have any?
You know what? I mean, I'm a big on supporting our small business community. We don't have an office at City Hall, so I tend to say that I've been doing the job a little differently than past council members. I get out there. I started office hours where I'll invite the residents to come meet me at a business so that we can have a more casual conversation. Because I think a lot of people, they don't know who we are until they have a problem. They don't come to City Hall, so I think you have to meet people in a host of areas. Couple of things that I really want to focus on. Our minority business community. I started a internship program, and I talked to you about the fact that mentorship and raising up the next generation of leaders is really important to me. So I started a high school internship program, and that served, a couple of different goals of mine. Number one is I was going to take one student from each high school. I ended up with 4, and because they were just so terrific. But I was exposing them to elected officials, people in the community that they necessarily would not have met. And what we started to work on was there's no Black History Project chronicle of the residents in our city. So what the residents worked on with me is started a Black History Project, which we will then share with our historical museum, because they had nothing. Any of the, I don't know if most people know the African bookstore in Broward, the first one, it's still going, it's online now, we started in the city of Plantation. The original owner has passed away and his daughter's running it, but that's something that no one in the community knew. So what the kids started to do was profile individuals. Bobby DuBose was one of them, who either attended Plantation schools, grew up in this community, started a business in this community. That's going to be ongoing for us. And what I really want to focus on next is our minority-owned businesses, because they don't always get to be highlighted and shown a lot of love. We just had some business owners come to City Hall. They had a proclamation, but I think what I'd like the interns to do for this next year is kind of create that project that we did with individuals, now focusing on the businesses. So I want to see more of a highlight on that. Not a lot of them belong to our Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to pull them into that. And then continue with my internship program. One of the young women wants to be a civil rights attorney. I was just working on her college recommendation letter today. And, it was incredibly important for her to sit down with a Congresswoman, Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and hear about her trajectory, to sit down with a Bobby DuBose or, a host of other people that were important in the community, that she could see that excellence and what was waiting for her at the other side. So those are really my priorities in building up the next generation of leaders in the community.
You said some things that have me ask like one question, and I know we gotta, you have to go. So one of the things that you were talking about, since you want to do this project, being inclusive of African Americans or people of color that have done things in Plantation or made some sort of mark, and we were in development was something that we spent like more than half the time talking about. So, and I know you're going to part of what's included in these developers is that they have affordable housing. What about having them hire locally and also having a diverse staff? Is that something that the city council can require from these people that want to build? Because at the end of the day, people need money to do all the things that you're talking about, right? So you can have this affordable housing, but if ain't nobody making enough money to pay whatever the number is that exists, how does that help? And if they're bringing in workers and not employing local, how is that necessarily helping the community? It seems like the developers getting some subsidy and, they're going to make their money regardless, right? So is there a requirement? Is that something that that can be considered, is to have them hire a certain percentage of local folks and also hire a diverse workforce?
I love that. We do give, we now have a full procurement department. We just had a procurement administrator who happens to be an African American male, and Charles does an amazing job with procurement. And we do give preference to, local minority-owned businesses. But I love the idea, and I'll talk to him about that. Again, the council, I'm not the mayor. Administration makes a lot of those decisions, but I would love to see. And I don't think that anything's in place where they talk about the labor in the community. And I think that's an important component. So I'll definitely, look into that. Another thing that when we talk about the community and affordability, we need to make sure that people are able to retain the value in their house. So, when I talk about some of the older parts of our community that maybe need a little love, I use the example, my mom's a widow. She's by herself living on Social Security. We have a lot of residents that, they may not be able to have the money to fix that fence or paint the house, or they may be getting code violations because of that. So I had wanted to start a program. We've only able to do 3 houses, but I'm working with the interfaith community now to make sure that we have a community coalition, because a lot of people out there that want to volunteer their time to go out there and do those projects and help people retain the value in their home, and really retain the value in the neighborhoods as well. So that's another thing that I'm focused on.
All right.
So tell people how to get in touch with you.
Yeah, girl, tell them how
to volunteer their time.
You still taking donations for your campaign? I'm still taking
donations. Thanks.
Right, so
yeah.
How to donate, how they can get in touch with you, how to volunteer.
DeniseHorland.com. And again, I really appreciate, we didn't talk short-term rentals. There's a whole host of things. We didn't talk infrastructure as much, but I really appreciate you shining a light on the down ballot candidates and local government. We are the people who touch every day, and it's really important.
So tell us, what do you want to say about short-term rentals? Is that the Airbnb problem, or is that something else that you're talking about?
Oh, that one I could talk about all
problem, but it seems as though the Airbnbs are becoming an issue.
So listen, and I've used them when I've traveled. They're great, but they're a big issue, and I've been advocating before the legislature on this. Tallahassee, like many things, is really overstepped the bounds of local decision making, and they've tied our hands on this. It should be a local zoning issue. And what's happening is we have corporations coming in it, just like corporations are buying a lot of these, multifamily residents and their investments for them. They're buying single family homes. So that's less homes inventory for a family that wants to come and live in our community. And they're snapping them up. They register them as individual LLCs. And when you go to Tallahassee and we testify and we, say that we need to be able to, regulate them, they always tell us it's about private property rights. And our answer is, what about the property rights of the people living next door who thought they were going to live in a quiet residential neighborhood, and now they have a party house next door? It's a huge problem. We have an ordinance in place. We're trying to tighten it up. But again, we are really limited. One of the things I just asked for in our budget was a full-time or part-time employee. They're going to give me a full-timer. I asked for part-time to oversee short-term rentals, the registration, the enforcement, because it's a runaway train, and it's adversely affecting our communities, and nobody's talking about what that's doing to affordability in our communities as well. So.
Yeah, that's because if they can, do rent a house for like $500 a day, who wants a tenant? You know what I mean? No one wants a tenant if they can do that.
Yeah, right. Mm-hmm.
Right. So that's fantastic.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
All right. I'm glad you got to talk about that, because I know that's an issue, but sometimes, some folks want to talk about it because it is touchy. And then you have situations where you don't know who's there, right? Like, it's not like they're necessarily doing background checks on people that are coming. I mean, right. I practice law, and sometimes I deal with cases, and, some of the houses get raided, you know what I mean? And you're in a decent neighborhood, and it's all people are making videos and stuff at the house, and it's all different types of issues that's happening in those.
And I had sex traffickers move in next door to me 8 years ago. So these things are happening in our communities, and and they're not allowing us to control it. So it's a big issue. But talk to some local electeds. When a suggestion for you, when the Tallahassee is back in session, because a lot of your local electeds, we go up there and we advocate for our communities. I think it's one of the most important things we can do. And those will be some interesting conversations for you about some of the things that Tallahassee is doing that affects us on the local level. And we need people.
Yeah, we know what they're doing. We actually watch when they have session on floridachannel.org. We watch the sessions, and I'm telling you, it's like the most frustrating experience.
Yes, it is.
It's crazy.
And we try to watch and get as much as information so we can come back and
No, we actually do watch. We spend way too much time watching. And then it's like, are these people nuts? Like, where are they from?
And when we tell people don't believe that that's what the conversation is, but that's what the conversation is in Tallahassee.
And half the time you're stunned. You're like, they cannot believe the words that's coming out of their mouth. They cannot believe what they can't possibly believe what they're saying. So we are familiar. Yes, we are familiar. Yeah. And I didn't know it was such a big thing also happening in Plantation. I know a lot of the folks in Fort Lauderdale out east on the water, you know, with the, you know, people have nice houses with the views. Right. And then all the, you know, I mean, it's
well, and I think, you know what, to your point, Sandra, it started on the coast, and I'm involved in the Florida League of Cities, and that has been really beneficial for me because we're 411 municipalities in the state, and, you know, Broward's very different from Gadsden County, but we're all fighting for some of the same things. And it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Independent, Democrat, we want to retain the value in our communities and make it a place that people want to come and live. But we've all been fighting the short-term rental, and the people on the coast had these ordinances in place. And if it was prior to 2011, they were able to keep their control a little bit. But the municipalities in the interior, Plantation didn't think about it, you know, so it really wasn't until the last couple of years. Yeah. And basically, if you're opening an Airbnb in Plantation, pretty much you could be assured that they want to use it as a party house, you know, and you could have 60 cars out in front and you don't know who's there. So it's a huge problem.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Denise Horland .com. Make sure you go donate, volunteer, help her out. Listen, November 8th is not about like 50 days away. You know,
it's the last day to vote. We want you to vote early. Vote by mail and vote early.
Vote early. October 11th is the last day to register to vote. October 24th through the 6th will be your early voting dates. October 28th is the last day for you to request your mail-in ballot. Listen, October 1st is around the corner, less than 2 days away. Please, please, please vote early if you can. As soon as you get your mail-in ballot, vote, send it back, and you can track it. So democracy was on the ballot this week. Okay.
This term. Yeah, this midterm. Democracy is on the ballot. All right. Thank you. So if they volunteer for you, they're going to get a t-shirt.
They're going to get a t-shirt and they'll get food. They'll get whatever I've got. They'll have it.
All righty.
Denise has signs. She has t-shirts. You know, go to her website. Get all your goodies.
Yes.
Have a great evening.
Thank you, Narnik and Sandra. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good one.